The orbital station moved like a living thing, breathing softly through its walls. Power flowed through it in deep, steady rhythms, and most of the beings aboard trusted those rhythms without thinking. Machines were monitored. Systems were measured. Numbers were watched. There was no reason for concern. Elias moved quietly through one of the lower maintenance corridors, pushing a small cleaning cart ahead of him. The wheels made almost no sound. He preferred it that way. Loud things distracted him. Loud things hid other sounds that mattered. The lights above flickered for a fraction of a second. Most people would not have noticed. The station was old by orbital standards and minor flickers happened all the time. Elias noticed anyway. His eyes lifted, then his hand slowed on the cart handle. He stopped walking. The corridor was warm but not uncomfortably so. Still, Elias felt sweat along the back of his neck. The air felt wrong, not hot, not cold, just wrong. He closed his eyes for a moment and listened. The station hummed as it always did, but the hum was uneven. There was a slight delay in one layer of sound, like a beat that came just a breath too late. It reminded him of a generator he had once heard on a mining outpost long ago. That generator had failed 12 minutes later. Elias opened his eyes and looked toward the far end of the corridor. Beyond a sealed bulkhead was the reactor access ring. He was not supposed to be there. Cleaners were allowed to work nearby, but never inside. That was for engineers and specialists from species that had built the station. Elias was just human labor, replaceable, cheap. He started pushing the cart again, slower now. The station was home to many species, tall ones with long limbs, short ones with too many eyes. Some with skin like metal, others like stone. Humans were common enough, but they were never in charge. They were known for endurance and adaptability, not intelligence. That was what the others believed. Elias did not care what they believed. He cared about finishing his shift and picking up his child afterward. His daughter, Myra, would be waiting for him at the habitation ring school. She liked to sit by the window and count ships. She waved every time she saw a human freighter, even though she knew no one inside could see her. Elias smiled faintly at the thought, then frowned as the hum shifted again. This time, the sound was clearer. A low vibration passed through the floor, gentle but wrong. His boots felt it before his ears did. He stopped again. No, he whispered to himself. He turned the cart around and moved closer to the reactor bulkhead. The metal door was smooth and marked with warning symbols in several alien languages. One of them glowed faintly, reacting to changes in energy flow. The glow pulsed, once, paused twice. That pattern did not belong there. Elias set the cart aside and crouched, placing his palm against the wall. The metal felt warmer than it should. Not dangerously hot, but heating too fast. He stood quickly and looked down the corridor. A technician from one of the dominant species was approaching, tablet in hand, eyes fixed on data only he could see. "Excuse me," Elias said, raising his voice politely. The technician barely glanced at him. "This area is restricted. Cleaning cycle is scheduled for later." "There's something wrong with the reactor," Elias said. The technician stopped walking. Slowly, he turned, his eyes narrowing. "You are not authorized to make that assessment." "I know," Elias replied, "but the vibration is off. The phase timing." The technician made a sharp sound, something between a laugh and a hiss. "Humans do not feel fusion reactors. Sensors do, and sensors report nominal function." Elias opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. He had learned long ago that arguing rarely helped. "The alarms haven't gone yet," he said instead, "but they will, soon." The technician tapped his tablet, irritated. "Return to your assigned duties. If you interfere with core operations, security will be notified." Elias looked past him at the door at the faint pulsing light. "If you wait for the alarms," Elias said quietly, "it'll be too late." The technician's patience ended. "Enough. Leave." Elias stepped back. He nodded once and retrieved his cart. As he pushed it away, he felt eyes on his back, full of annoyance and dismissal. He kept moving until the technician disappeared around the corner. Then Elias stopped again. The vibration was stronger now. He turned and went back. The corridor was empty. The hum had shifted again, higher this time, tighter like a string pulled too far. Elias' chest felt heavy. His thoughts raced, not with fear but with memory. He remembered standing knee-deep in floodwater on a broken colony world, holding a flashlight in his teeth while repairing a failing power grid so shelters would stay warm through the night. He remembered listening to machines, because manuals were gone and help was hours away. He remembered that systems always spoke before they screamed. The reactor was speaking now. Elias approached the bulkhead panel. There was a small access port near the bottom, hidden behind a removable cover. It was old. The kind of thing modern engineers trusted automated systems to handle. Elias knelt and pried the cover open. Inside were manual controls, dusty and unused. His hands moved without hesitation. He did not think in equations. He did not calculate probabilities. He listened. He felt the rhythm through the metal, through his bones. The reactor was drifting out of phase, its internal balance slipping toward a resonance that would overload containment. He adjusted a dial by the smallest amount. The vibration changed. Not enough. He adjusted again, timing the movement with the hum, waiting for the moment when the sound dipped. Sweat ran into his eyes. His heart pounded. Behind him, alarms finally began to scream. Red lights flashed across the corridor. Footsteps thundered. "Step away from the panel," someone shouted. Elias did not turn. He waited for the next dip and made one final adjustment. The hum settled. The vibration faded. The station exhaled. Elias slumped back against the wall just as strong hands grabbed his arms and pulled him away. Security surrounded him. Weapons were raised. Angry voices filled the air. "What did you do?" someone demanded. Elias looked at the panel, then at the flashing lights slowly returning to normal. "I fixed it," he said softly. No one listened. Elias was pushed to his knees as security restraints locked around his wrists. The corridor was loud with voices, alarms, and confusion, but the sound he focused on was the reactor. It was calm now. The wrong vibration was gone. The hum had returned to a steady rhythm. That was how he knew he had been right. Engineers flooded into the corridor, their movements sharp and angry. Several of them stared at the open access panel as if it were a crime scene. Others stared at Elias with disbelief, irritation, and something close to fear. One of the senior engineers stepped forward, tall and thin, skin marked with symbols of rank. "Who authorized this human to access the reactor systems?" "No one," a security officer replied. He forced the panel open. The engineer's eyes narrowed. "Then this individual has committed a serious breach." Elias lifted his head. "If I hadn't," he said calmly, "the core would have gone critical." The engineer let out a harsh sound. "Impossible, the safeguards." "Triggered late," Elias interrupted, then stopped himself. He lowered his gaze. "They would have triggered late." The engineer ignored him and turned to another technician. "Status." The technician looked confused as data streamed across their display. "The instability is gone." Phase balance restored. No containment damage. Silence followed. Slow, heavy silence. Someone else spoke, quieter this time. "That shouldn't be possible." Elias felt his shoulders ache as the restraints held tight. He was tired now. The adrenaline was fading, leaving only exhaustion and worry. His first thought was not punishment. It was time. He was going to be late to pick up Myra. The senior engineer turned back to him. "Explain," they demanded. Elias hesitated. Not because he didn't know how, but because he knew they wouldn't like the answer. "I listened," he said. Several engineers exchanged looks. "That is not an explanation," the senior engineer said. "It is to me," Elias replied. "The reactor was slipping into harmonic feedback. Not fast enough for your sensors to flag, but fast enough to feel. It was pulling itself out of balance." "You are not trained in reactor physics," the engineer snapped. "No," Elias agreed. "I'm trained in keeping things running when they shouldn't be." That answer did not satisfy them. Elias was taken from the corridor and escorted through bright halls filled with staring eyes. Word traveled fast on a station like this. A human cleaner had touched the reactor. He was placed in a holding room, small and cold, with a clear barrier instead of walls. Engineers gathered on the other side, arguing in sharp tones. Elias sat quietly. Minutes passed, then more. Data was checked again, and again. Every model showed the same thing. The reactor had been seconds away from a cascading failure that would have overwhelmed containment systems. Official projections showed that alarms would have sounded only after the point of recovery had passed. Someone finally asked the question no one wanted to ask. If he hadn't intervened, what would have happened? No one answered at first. Then a quiet voice said, "The station would have lost power to 3 civilian rings." Another added, "Containment breach probability was low, but not zero." Low but not zero meant thousands of lives at risk. Elias watched them through the barrier. He could read body language well. He saw the shift from anger to uncertainty. Finally, the senior engineer stepped forward again. "Why did you act?" Elias answered without hesitation. "Because I knew I had to." "That is not sufficient reasoning," the engineer said. Elias met their eyes. "My daughter lives here." The room went still. "She was in school," Elias continued. "If power failed, life support would have gone into emergency rotation. Maybe it holds. Maybe it doesn't. I wasn't going to find out." No one interrupted him. "I didn't do this to prove anything," Elias said. "I did it because waiting wasn't an option." The engineers withdrew to consult in private. Elias was left alone with his thoughts. He wondered how he would explain being late to Myra. He imagined her waiting by the window, counting ships, wondering why he wasn't there. Eventually, the barrier opened. Elias stood slowly, his joints stiff. The senior engineer spoke again, but their voice was different now. Less sharp, more careful. "You will not be punished." Elias blinked. No," the engineer said, "but you will be questioned further." That questioning lasted hours. They asked about his past, about where he learned to listen to machines. Elias told them about frontier worlds, broken infrastructure, and long nights fixing systems with no help coming. They tested him. They brought him to other systems, power regulators, life support subsystems, old machinery no one trusted anymore. Each time, Elias closed his eyes, listened, and pointed out problems before sensors confirmed them. The engineers grew quiet. Patterns emerged. They pulled station records, incident reports, near-miss failures across multiple sectors. Humans were always nearby, not engineers. Workers, laborers, maintenance staff. They had reported strange sounds, feelings, small changes that were dismissed as superstition or error. In several cases, disasters had been avoided anyway, often without official acknowledgement. The conclusion was uncomfortable. Humans were not careless. They were observant in ways the station's systems did not account for. A new meeting was called. Station command attended. So did representatives from multiple species. Elias stood at the center of it all, feeling out of place in his worn uniform. "You are proposing," one commander said slowly, "that humans possess an unquantified system intuition." "Yes," the senior engineer replied, "and that we have been ignoring it." Another voice spoke up. "This borders on mysticism." Elias shook his head. "It's not magic. It's survival. When you grow up where failure means death, you learn to notice things early." The room fell quiet. In the end, a decision was made. Elias was offered a new role, not as an engineer, not as a commander, as an advisor. His job would be simple. When a human said something felt wrong, command would listen. The policy was recorded that same day. Elias was finally released. He ran. He ran through corridors, past startled workers, toward the habitation ring. His legs burned, his lungs ached, but he did not slow down. He reached the school just as the doors were closing. Myra stood inside, small hands pressed to the glass, eyes searching. When she saw him, her face lit up. "Papa!" she shouted. Elias laughed, breathless, and waved. Later, as he walked home with her, the station hummed softly around them. Myra held his hand and talked about ships. Elias listened. The station listened too, and for the first time it listened to humans.